Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for coming here. My name is Jeff Kelly Lowenstein, and I am the founder and executive director of the Center for Collaborative Investigative Journalism, or CCIJ. And so it's my pleasure and my privilege to welcome everybody here to thank on our side Fola Folayan, our communications and partnerships manager, who has just done a tremendous job in promoting this very exciting and relevant and timely presentation by our friends and colleagues at ACLED. And of course, our colleagues at ACLED, we've built a partnership over time, and we're very happy for this event, which will then advance not only hopefully your information, but also what we do together. So thank you very much, of course, all for being here. And I did want to mention that we're in a webinar format because the sign up and the interest in this issue was so high. We were just chatting before the session that nearly 700 people signed up for this. So it's just a tremendous turnout, and we're very grateful for all of you. So I just wanted to talk for a minute about who we are at CCIJ, and then give a brief overview of the session before, unfortunately, I need to leave just because I teach at Grand Valley State University, and just it's kind of running into my office hours. So I unfortunately will not be able to stay for the whole time. But at CCIJ, we do three major activities, all of which attempt to strengthen journalism as a way to strengthen democracy. And so we commission and help carry out investigative work on key issues, bringing together visual data and investigative journalists as equal partners from the beginning of projects. We do trainings, formal monthly trainings online, like what Fola has coordinated here, and has just done a tremendous job since she joined us 2 years ago. We have formal trainings, we have informal training within and outside the team with the journalists with whom we work and within members of our team. So that's the second thing, training. And then the third activity is working to support journalists who are working and living in very dangerous circumstances. And so each of those three activities that we do are designed to help strengthen journalism, to strengthen democracy. We have a very vibrant community of more than 3,000 people. Again, Fola's done an excellent job of helping us to build that. We have a very active WhatsApp community. So if it is of interest to you to follow up and become part of our community, please feel free to follow up with Fola around that, and we look forward to welcoming you. So here is our plan for today. The training is going to give an overview of ACLED data, covering what it is, how to download it, and its potential applications. It will explore how the data can be used, showcase ACLED's tools and analytical products, and explain ACLED's data collection and review processes. And we also will have a case study from Lynn, who is one of our former team members from China. So here is the order of the session. So I'm just wrapping up introductory remarks. Then we will transition to Rose Davis, the Senior Methodology Officer on Data Literacy at ACLED, who previously worked as a U.S. researcher at the North America desk. Rose holds a Master's of Global Affairs from the University of Toronto and a BA in Sociology and Hispanic and Latin American Studies from Brock University. So Rose will take it from here before going to Lynn for the case study. Rose mentioned that there will be a Q&A session, and so if you have questions along the way, please feel free to drop them in the chat. The ACLED side will look to collect those and try and respond to as many as possible. So thank you again very much for being here, and we really look forward to the session. Thank you. Rose, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jeff. Perfect. So just a few things kind of before we dive into the training. I do want to note that this session is being recorded and will be shared with CCIJ for upload on their YouTube channel following the training. So you can watch it again later if you wish to. And Zoom also offers closed captions for your convenience, so you can just turn them on in your settings if you like. And again, please feel free to use the Q&A feature on Zoom during the presentation. As questions come up, we'll do our best to answer those at the end during the Q&A period. So welcome, everyone. Really excited about the interest in this training, and thank you for having us. We're really excited also about this collaboration with the Center for Collaborative Investigative Journalism. So my name is Rose Davies, and I'm the Senior Methodology Officer at ACLED. We're very happy to be partnering on this training, and I hope that all of the journalists who are here today will come away with a good introduction to what ACLED does, how you can use the data to support your work and to support your reporting. And our hope is that you'll find this session kind of practical for the kinds of stories that you're working on day to day. So let's see the agenda for today. So today during our session, I'll show you what ACLED data is, how to download it, and show you some ways that you can use ACLED data in your journalistic work, provide an introduction to a few of our online data platforms and analysis work, and also some special projects that we have available on our website. Following this, again, we'll have time for the question and answer period, hopefully at least 25 minutes for that. And also we'll include a use case presentation from the CCIJ as well, showcasing how they're using ACLED data. So this is an introductory session, so we'll only touch on kind of the very basics of ACLED's methodology, but you can find in-depth materials on our methodology on our knowledge base on the ACLED website if you want further information on anything that we touch on today. So first of all, ACLED stands for the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data, and we collect disaggregated event data on political violence and demonstrations across the globe, which are published every week. And our mission is to provide accurate and accessible data and analysis to better inform decision-making and reporting about countries in crisis. So what does ACLED do on a day-to-day basis? We're monitoring conflicts and disorder worldwide, providing locally informed data and powerful analytical tools and timely analysis. We're also supporting local partners and decision makers around the world. So our data is updated weekly, though we're happy to announce that several regions have already moved to bi-weekly publications with plans to take this to global bi-weekly coverage in the future. So you'll be able to access the most updated data more frequently as journalists. And we also reached global coverage of all countries and territories in 2022. So depending on the region, our data coverage spans 4 to 10 or more years of data. And you can find more information about the specific coverage periods for different regions on our knowledge base. So ACLED works in events. An event is disaggregated by the date, when it happened, the location, where it happened, the actors, so who it involved. Other variables include the event and sub-event types, descriptive event notes, and conservative fatalities estimates. And we've also recently added in collaboration with WorldPop, the population affected column. So this can give you an idea about the conflict exposure. We'll expand on all of these in a bit as well. So ACLED stands out from other conflict data sets for its extensive geographic coverage and granularity of our data, but it's also characterized by our numerous local partnerships. So this ensures that data collection is grounded in the local context and perspectives. We also have a rigorous and transparent methodology that's based on multiple verified sources. So each event also undergoes a thorough review and validation process, which I'll expand on in a minute as well, to ensure as best we can the accuracy of the data. We also have a network of researchers working in over 80 languages. So this ensures comprehensive and precise data collection. All of these elements kind of contribute to the quality and reliability of ACLED data. And I want to emphasize that every event in our data set is manually coded and reviewed by our trained researchers who are experts in their region of coverage. And that human oversight is very important to ACLED. It means that the data reflects the careful judgment and consideration of the context, which is something that you can't really get from automated data sets. Furthermore, our publication frequency and the georeferencing make it a unique conflict data set. So before we get into anything else about the variables and methodology, how can you access and download ACLED data? So to download the data from our website, you'll need to register using your organization's email address. So please make sure you register with your institutional domain, so your organization, newspaper, or company, rather than your personal email address, as this will provide you greater access benefits, including to access to certain data platforms and the biweekly data releases and the full data set. So if you do not have an institutional email address, please register for an account using your regular email. And then you can email access@acleddata.com, explain your use case and examples of your recent work, and then they'll assign you to the correct access level. So once registered, you can log into your My ACLED account and head over to the conflict data page. There's a data export tool where you can download all available ACLED data for your purposes. You can filter there for a specific time period, country, location, and filter for event types, actors, and add the population affected column to the file if you wish. And on the conflict data page, you can also easily download curated topical and regional data files, as well as our new aggregated data sets for ease of analysis. So for example, if you're interested in all data for Africa or all data worldwide on election violence, you can find those curated data sets available to download just with the click of a button. And those data sets are also updated with the most recent data every week. Additionally, you can find curated data sets there organized by conflict categories, including events on repression, insurgency, atrocities, terrorism, and foreign military engagement, if you're interested in analyzing just those type of events. So by default, when you export the data, they are exported in a format where each row represents a single event on a specific day and location and involving distinct actors. So if you wish to do analysis on actors, you might want to download the data in a format that displays the events by single actors instead. So this is called the monadic actor data set. This option is also available on the data export tool. If you have any questions about actor analysis or doing analysis on any specific actor in general, please feel free to reach out to us. If you're working on a specific report on these actors, we're happy to help you access that data. I also want to point out that you can access the data through our API if you prefer to work that way. We have full documentation available at this link here. And if you have questions about how to access the API or use it effectively, you can always reach out to us by email as well. Okay, so what does the data look like when you actually download it? So through the data export tool, you'll receive a file that looks like this, essentially. The information that we have here is organized into several categories. So I'll just go through a few of these here. So first we have the date information, so the exact date, the year, and the temporal precision. The temporal precision is a number between 1 and 3, which essentially represents the confidence that ACLED has that the event occurred on the date that it's coded to. So for example, if we know that the event occurred on the exact date that it's coded to, it will be a temporal precision of 1. We'll code it to a temporal precision of 2 if we know it's within 7 days, and 3 if it's within a month. And if we can't pinpoint an event to having occurred within a month's period, a month's time, we don't usually code those events. And then we have our event variables, event type variables, which include the disorder type. So you'll see there are categories like political violence, demonstrations, or strategic developments. And nested within these, we have the event types and sub-event types, which give kind of the more specific and exact forms of violence or disorder that's been coded to that event. Then we have several actor columns, which include our actor 1 and actor 2 variables and their respective associated actors. So the primary actor columns identify the main actors involved in an event with very specific details about the actor information and the actor name. So alongside this, we also have our interaction codes, which group those actors into a broader category. So for example, you might see here military forces of Myanmar as listed as actor 1 for an event, and then the interaction code will be the broad grouping of state forces. And another key variable here in the actor columns is the civilian targeting variable, which makes it easier to filter the data down quickly if you only want to look at which events were civilians the targets of violence, for example. Then we also have our location information, which includes coordinates and a breakdown of the different administrative divisions of the locations, and also a geoprecision code as well, which functions similar to the temporal precision code. Then we have our source columns, which lists exactly where we originally sourced the information for the event, and there will often be several different sources used to code an individual event. So you can reference that there as well. And then we have our notes column, which summarizes all of the kind of qualitative information into a couple of sentences. And these are written by our researchers to give kind of a narrative version of the events with a bit more details than you might find in the variable columns. And it kind of gives you an overall picture of what occurred during the event and the sequence of events. And then we have our conservative fatalities estimate, followed by our tags for analysis. So you might want to use the tags column to filter specifically for events where local administrators were targets of violence or where women were targets of violence. We have tags already applied to the data set that you can filter for there. So that's basically what the data look like when you download it. I won't be going further into most of these variables today, but we do have a full public code book and documentation available on our knowledge base where you can find detailed information about each of these variables. So just to kind of give you a summary view of what information is available for each event in the data set, we have the event dates, the types of violence, who was involved, the actors, the different location information, our sources, and the short description followed by the fatalities for each event. So what types of events does ACLED actually code? So broadly speaking, ACLED codes events of political violence, demonstrations, and strategic developments. So by our definition, political violence means the use of force by a group with a political purpose or motivation. So in addition to that, we code demonstration events. We're tracking protest movements around the world. We have all of this data available as well. And we also include what we call strategic developments in the data set. And these are non-violent events, but still important for understanding the context of a conflict. And they can help you gather more information about a conflict that doesn't immediately fit into the other violent event categories of political violence and demonstrations. So on this chart, you'll see our 6 event types in dark blue, which are battles, protests, riots, explosions / remote violence, violence against civilians, and strategic developments. And underneath, you'll see their respective sub-event types in light blue, which indicate the specific forms of violence or disorder recorded in any individual event. So an important thing to keep in mind, sorry, is that the number of recorded events does not necessarily equal the number of violent incidents, because several types of violence may be present within the context of the same event. So meaning the same event that's occurring in the same location with the same actors and on the same date. But these are not disaggregated into separate events, but rather will code to the event highest on the hierarchy. So on this table, battles are the highest on the hierarchy, working to the right to strategic developments as the lowest on the event hierarchy. So to emphasize again what we mean by event, what we mean is something that occurs in the same location involving the same actors and on the same date. And those are grouped into a single event record, which often can include multiple forms of violence. So for example, if there are several grenade attacks happening at the same time and place as part of an overall armed clash between the same two actors, that would all be coded as one event under the armed clash sub-event types. You'll see here that we do have a grenade sub-event type, but you won't see a separate grenade event coded in that case because it's part of the overall armed clash. So we code it to the highest on this hierarchy. So when different forms of violence overlap in the same context, we'll always follow this hierarchy to code those events. Just something to keep in mind as you're doing analysis on the data. But where does our data come from, and what are our sources? How are events coded, and can you actually trust ACLED data? So every country has a unique conflict and media landscape, as we know. So ACLED tailors its sourcing to the region or country to ensure it captures as best we can the reality on the ground. So we have more than 140 researchers worldwide that are manually sourcing and coding the events for their region every single week. And this includes a weekly review of set lists of sources for their country or region of coverage. To give you an idea, it's more than 3,000 sources in more than 80 languages that are checked weekly by our researchers. And these sources include traditional media, NGO reports, local partners, especially vetted social media accounts of experts, journalists, or activists reporting on conflict. And accuracy and consistency are priorities for ACLED in our sourcing process. So we prioritize local sources and local languages, and our sourcing is tailored and also adjusted regularly for conflict dynamics and kind of emerging information environments in each country, which are varied and change over time, of course. So as part of this process, new sources are added to our source list occasionally and are also back-coded as far as possible to keep historical data comparable to present data. So is ACLED reliable? Our researchers are experts in their region of coverage, and they understand the local context and languages. They're also trained to take into account reporting biases and filter out misinformation, and also triangulate information whenever possible. So as I mentioned, you will see that we're very often using several sources to triangulate information about an individual event. So we're not just relying on a single source in most cases. So this map kind of gives you a visual representation of how our commitment to local language sourcing plays out in practice. So these are events filtered that were sourced by local language reports versus English language reports, to give you an idea of the kind of source scales that we're using. And as mentioned, we use multiple different scales of sources, including NGO reports and our local partners. To give you a visual idea, we filtered here on the left our data just for traditional media sources. And then on the right, using our full source coverage to including our local partner data and NGO reports that we're incorporating to kind of give you an idea of the difference in the breadth of information that is available in ACLED data versus just traditional media sources. And I'd like to also take a moment to talk about some of our partners. So ACLED works with more than 65 different partner organizations around the world. And some of these are visible here on this slide. And there's also more information on our website about our partners. And these partners are really important to us because they either collaborate directly with us to collect data or are sharing data that they've already are gathering on the ground where they're working. So we're always aiming to support and incorporate locally sourced data whenever possible, because this kind of information provides crucial context and ensures the data set reflects the realities on the ground. Especially, this is especially important in contexts where traditional media and reporting is difficult. We are really relying on our local partners in those cases. So once the events are collected and coded by our researchers, the data is then verified. It goes through several processes of verification. So It's verified for accuracy and aligned for consistency. Our global methodology team performs a final review of the weekly data before it's published. And this is in an effort to ensure that the coding is accurate and also adheres to our global methodology, allowing for comparability between regions. So each week, our data essentially goes through 3 processes of review, once by the researcher themselves who perform a list of checks, then by the regional research desk, and lastly by our global methodology team. ACLED also has a quality assurance team that incorporates continuous checks and refinements to the data set. So for instance, past data may be updated with new information as it becomes available, including corrections and additions to past events when necessary. So for example, if we have updated fatality counts for an event that occurred 2 weeks prior, we will go back and correct that previous event with the new information as we receive it. You can find a list of ongoing projects that ACLED is undertaking on our knowledge base at this link here. And this can give you an idea of where you might see improvements to past data, kind of what we're working on, forthcoming additions to the data set that can help inform your reporting or inform you of what to expect in the future with our publications. So when we publish large projects or corrections, we will also include an announcement in our update logs here to provide you more information about what was added or changed to previous data. So I'll leave it there really for our methodology discussion, but I want to talk about what you can actually do with ACLED data, how this can be useful to your work, and what kind of information you can analyze using the data. So a few examples of the types of analysis you can do are looking at trends in political violence events, changes in conflict, what actors are involved, and how are they behaving? So what types of violence they're employing and changes in their behavior over time. You can also look at geographic patterns, where conflict is concentrated and where conflict is expanding to. And you can look at how conflict affects civilians. So the number of people that are exposed to violent conflict events and trends in how and by whom civilians are being targeted, are targets of violence. I'll also like to point out there are a couple limitations to the application of ACLED data. So while our data is very granular, excuse me, it may not be suitable for day-to-day operational safety and security monitoring, considering that our data is updated weekly or bi-weekly for the previous week. So day-to-day monitoring is not the best use case for our data. Data is available at the day level, but not for specific times of day. So it's coded just to the date. There's no timestamp of when the event occurred in that 24 hours. And our data is available at the city or village level with a couple limited exceptions of neighborhood levels. But the coordinates fall into the center of that location, not at the street level of where that event occurred. And ACLED data does not contain any personally identifiable information, and it cannot be used for individual tracking. So individual tracking of armed group members, for example, it's not possible. We're not tracking individuals in our data at all. And ACLED data has been cited over 20,000 times in the past year by journalists around the world. This is because ACLED is recording political violence and demonstrations in every country and territory around the world, so that in moments of crisis, such as the outbreak of war in Sudan or the ground invasion of Gaza by Israel, we have the data and knowledge on the conflict trends that brought the world to these critical points. So it's important to keep that in mind also when using data in your work. So I want to share a couple of quick examples of how ACLED data has been used in journalistic outputs. So these examples are meant to show you how you can incorporate data into your own reporting, whether that's using it as a foundation of a story or simply backing up your reporting with solid and reliable data that can make your work more convincing and authoritative. So using conflict data can add a lot of value to reporting. It can highlight trends that might not be obvious from individual incidents, and it can give your readers a sense of the scale and proportion of conflict. So you can use the data to create visuals, like charts, maps, or infographics that make kind of these very complex conflict situations clearer and more impactful. So I'll go through a couple examples here that I'd love to show you. So Al Jazeera used ACLED data in this example to map the cross-border attacks between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon. They created kind of a visual representation comparing these attacks over time and the proportion of attacks by each actor. So this allowed them to not only show where violence is concentrated geographically, as you can see on the map here on the left, but also to illustrate the relative intensity of violence associated with each actor. So the next example I want to highlight is a report by The Independent, which drew heavily on ACLED data. The piece was published 3 years into Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and it used our data in a series of infographics, which are quite impactful. So the journalists here, they are showing how over time, how civilians have been targeted, and also they were able to map those attacks over time and where those attacks were perpetrated in Ukraine. So as in this report, you can also combine ACLED data with other sources to deepen the story. So in this report, they draw on data on refugees and displacement, so outside data sets. By layering these data sets, you can also build kind of a complete picture and create powerful data-driven storytelling, as they've done in this great report. And finally, I want to highlight a recent report by Primicia's newspaper in Ecuador, who used ACLED data on gang violence in Ecuador to show the prevalence of specific gangs, where they're present, and also how they are interacting with each other. So they were able to map out here kind of showing which actors are engaging in territorial disputes, how frequently these events are happening, and what forms of violence they're using against each other. So they created this interactive tool, which is excellent to show which gang actors are most often engaging with each other, which can help you understand territorial disputes of gangs in Ecuador. So aside from downloading the data through our export tool and performing the analysis yourself with whatever software you like, it can be a bit time consuming and a bit of a learning curve. If you want to explore ACLED data without downloading the data, we do have a number of online tools, data platforms available to help for these purposes. So these can serve as a great intro to explore what kind of information is available in the data and ask some questions of the data as well. So you can go to acleddata.com and then you go to the data platforms section. I'll show this to you in a second as well to take you to our different data platforms that we have available. So the Explorer tool allows you to create country profiles with regional overviews, including maps and charts on the number of ACLED events, fatalities, and the conflict exposure over the past week, month, or year of data. This is updated weekly, of course, as well. And our conflict exposure calculator calculates the measure, it measures the impact of conflict on civilians, rather. And I'll demonstrate both the Explorer and the conflict exposure platforms in a minute to show you how to gather some quick information from our data that you could use as statistics in your reporting. Then we have our conflict alert system, which computes monthly conflict forecasts. Our trend finder, which allows you to visualize trends in the most recent ACLED data to identify important changes in political violence and protest activity across and within countries, and also spot early warning signs. And then we have our weekly conflict index, which gives a weekly ranking of countries' level of violent conflict on multiple dimensions, including deadliness, danger, diffusion, and fragmentation. So as I mentioned, our conflict exposure is a measure of the number of people living within 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, and 5 kilometers of each conflict incident or demonstration recorded in our data. You can export this column, this information through our data export tool, as shown previously, or you can interact with the online calculator that will already help you collaborate the results by location and give you kind of a best estimate of the population that was exposed to violent conflict. So I want to kind of change it up a little bit and show you a quick exercise about how we can gather some statistics, some quick data points from the data platforms that I just mentioned. So this can be a quick way for you to use ACLED data in your work if you don't want to download the data and do in-depth analysis. These platforms are perfect for those purposes. So I'm going to show you the data that we have in these platforms for the past year in Sudan. And we'll be able to quickly gather information like how many political violence incidents were recorded, how many fatalities did these result in, and how many civilians were exposed to conflict, what types of violence they were exposed to as well. So let me change my screen share quickly. To ACLED website. One second. Okay. So you'll go to conflict data and data platforms, and this is where you'll be able to find all of these tools. And we'll first go to the Explorer tool. So here you can see a visual representation of the data. We want to find out how many political violence incidents were recorded in Sudan in the past year. So let's click on Sudan. And we can filter here for the past year. And we want to search specifically for political violence. So we can see in the past year, we had 200, this is worldwide. Why do I know it's Sudan? Oh, sorry, it's just lagging a little bit because I'm also on Zoom, but you should be able to see here we go, Sudan. So 4,580 political violence events were recorded in Sudan for the past year, resulting in over 20,000 fatalities from those political violence incidents. And you can also see here, you'll get a quick data point on how many civilians were exposed, meaning that they lived in a certain area surrounding those events that were recorded. So over 12 million people in Sudan were exposed to violent conflict in the past year. And you can also see here kind of the breakdown in the first administrative level locations of where this violence is concentrated. And you can see more details showing the event types that are most commonly contributing to the political violence recorded in Sudan. So we have a breakdown here of explosion/remote violence, how many battles occurred, and how many events were violence against civilians event types. Now I want to show you also the conflict exposure calculator. So here we go. Just give it a minute. So we want to find out how many, what percentage of Sudan's population was exposed to violent conflict in the past year. So you can quickly filter here for political violence. We want to search at the country level, and we want to find just for Sudan. And it defaults here to the previous 12 months. So we can just quickly gather a data point using this tool. So we estimate that 27% of Sudan's population was exposed to violent conflict in the past year. So this can help you use it in your reporting to show kind of the effect on civilians that any particular conflict is having. Okay, so let me switch back. I encourage you really to play around with these tools. You have access to them as journalists to help you with your work. So let me go back to screen. Okay. I would also like to highlight that we do publish analysis on our own data regularly, including our conflict index and our watch list, which is a yearly watch list. And ACLED's global analysis includes detailed reports, monthly regional updates, infographics, and more to explain kind of the crucial trends in the data that we're seeing by region, country, and thematically as well. We also publish analysis on actor profiles, and we're tracking electoral violence worldwide, and monitoring political violence targeting local officials. So all this is available on our analysis section on our the ACLED website as well. ACLED also has several special focus projects on Ukraine, Gaza, Middle East Conflict Monitor, Mozambique, the US, and Yemen. And each of these projects has more in-depth monthly overviews, actor profiles, and also include interactive maps and forecasts. So all this is available on the website for journalists as well to make use of. I would like to announce that the ACLED Media Relations team would like to let you know that next week they'll be holding a press briefing on our Gaza data. So in this kind of exclusive briefing, our Middle East team will be sharing the latest ACLED data and analysis on the most recent developments and the impact on civilians in Gaza. So journalists who are already registered with ACLED are invited to attend and can register via the link, hopefully that will be shared there in the chat for you all. So look forward to seeing you there as well to get some more information out there. So I want to highlight again that you can consult our knowledge base for any of the variables that I've mentioned here today. We have really in-depth materials on all of this and regional guides on doing analysis, FAQs on how to use the data, and it's fully searchable. So please make use of the knowledge base. And also, if you're interested in kind of the latest updates and thematic areas of interest, you can sign up for our newsletter to get updates to your email about our data and analysis outputs. So I would like to actually pass it off now to Lynn, who is going to share some use cases from CCIJ. So I'll stop sharing my screen, and then afterwards we'll go through the questions that you all have been submitting in the Q&A on Zoom. So Lynn, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure.
Let me stop my screen share.
Yeah, I just want to share an example of how in CCIJ we have used ACLED data to analyze farmer-herder conflicts in Nigeria. So this is kind of an end product, and it's inside an investigation we did around how climate change intensified farmer-herder conflicts in Nigeria, because it's usually described as either ethnic or religious conflicts, while the environmental factors are usually not counted in. So this is what the whole investigation is about, and we made a data visualization with ACLED data around the farmer-herder conflict. And it's an interactive visualization where you can actually see the different points of the exact location of where the conflicts happens. I think that's one of the really good things about ACLED data. You have the detailed geolocation information of each conflict. I want to dive a little bit into how we actually use this data. There is some complexities here in the soil where we didn't think about. I think overall it's really important to think of ways of adapting the data to your own use case. Things ACLED data, for example, in our case, it's not specifically collected for farmer-herder conflicts. So if you look at this is the raw data we downloaded from ACLED. We downloaded battles and violence against civilians, these two categories, during a specific time period. And well, you will see some actors coded as pastoralists or farmers. So this is, I think, associated actor, which is kind of an associated perpetrator. It's saying pastoralist. And sometimes farmers are also mentioned. So initially, when we think about, okay, so we have this big data set of thousands of events, we want to analyze farmer-herder conflicts. Where do we start? So we started searching for these keywords in actor 1, actor 2, associated actor 1, associated actor 2. So if you're not familiar with the coding system, it's basically the main perpetrator and the associated perpetrator, the main victim and the associated victim. So we filtered with the two keywords, farmers and herders, and we only ended up with like 100 or so events, which is not a lot, which is, it should be far more than this, right? If you see, like, these are all conflicts actually between these two groups, between farmers and pastoralists. But the number doesn't seem right, right? If we look at analysis around conflicts, farmer-herder conflicts in Nigeria, there must be like thousands of actually during this time period. So we did a bit more search on the internet about how other people use the ACLED data for farmer-herder conflicts. And we saw this article by the Africa Center for Strategic Studies. They publish kind of very professional security study article, and these are all experts in the field in security studies that writing these articles. And they made a similar map actually around farmer-herder conflicts in Nigeria. And you see this is definitely way more than 100 events they're mapping, and they're using the same data source. So what we did is we actually emailed this person who wrote up this article and asked him, well, how did you use ACLED data to analyze farmer herders, since the events are not specifically coded that way? So what the author replied to us about was, so basically they are filtering out where there is pastoralists either as a victim or as a perpetrator. So they're not kind of mapping both pastoralists and farmers, but only mapping the keywords pastoralists. And I will show you how this data looks like. So this is actually the approach we ended up using as well. So you will see some of these are actually between community militia and herders. This is an example. So for example, this community militia, it's not coded as farmers, right? But this is basically like community members from this, I think, local area. And then this pastoralist was the victim in the conflict. And if you look in detail at what the event is about, it said the armed members attacked the Fulani settlement, which is the pastoralist community, and killed about 9 people. The attack is said to be a reprisal for the attack of worshippers. So this is not specified as farmer-herder conflicts, but a lot of times the Fulani, and farmers conflicts in Nigeria are shaped in different ways. So there's a lot of reprisal attacks. So maybe you take my land and then I attack your mosque. And so there's a lot of situations like this where we kind of also included in our data set. I think there is another example I highlighted here, which is also between, if you look at how the actors are coded, this is a community militia, and it's against also pastoralists and Fulani ethnic group. And this one is very specific about land conflicts and water resources. So this is saying the pastoralists were accused of destroying farms and water resources in the community. So although you can see the perpetrator here are not coded as farmers, they are obviously farmers, but it's just there's no separate column for the role of the perpetrator. That's why we don't see like a farmer in this record, a farmer keyword in this record. But by looking at this kind of detailed description, we can still see, well, this is a farmer-herder conflict that happened because of land and water resource scarcities. Like overall, if you look at these two cases and look at more examples around this data set that we filter out with pastoralists, either as a victim or as a perpetrator, you will see some of these community militia are actually farmers, and a lot of the times they are a settled community and they have farms, but they are not necessarily coded as farmers. But there are also situations where these communal militia are not farmers, right? Or by just looking at the description of the event, you are not able to know if they are farmers or not. So we look at this article, we consulted this author, and we kind of take a similar approach as him, where we included all these community militia conflicts with pastoralists as well, even though we are not sure if they are necessarily farmers. And in our visualization, we took a more careful approach of kind of titling this visualization. This is saying conflicts involving pastoralists as perpetrators or victims, rather than explicitly saying, well, all of these that we're mapping are from farmer-herder conflicts. Even though I think the majority of these would be, but we haven't really looked at the database like event by event to code for farmer-herder conflict. I think that like if you're doing like a long-term study and you have time and the resource, you can actually go to our sourcings. ACLED usually provide a kind of description of the event, and you can find the source article if you look through the internet for those particular details. But for our investigation, we didn't have the time and resource to actually look into the description of each of these events. So that's why we kind of adopted this approach of finding the middle ground of including these conflicts involving pastoralists, kind of showing what is the impact of conflicts over like pastoralists in Nigeria, and using a title that's not specifying these farmer-herder conflicts. So this is probably not a perfect example if you are studying like farmer-herder conflicts in Nigeria or in other places. But I think it's a good case study for you to think about how do you adapt ACLED data for your own use case, because a lot of the times it will not fit perfectly for your use case, right? It might not specifically fit in what you are studying in this region. In our case, we were looking for farmer-related events, but it's not coded that way. So I think thinking about strategies to navigate that situation, and also consulting the experts to see how usually like experts in these kind of conflicts or in security studies use ACLED data for this type of analysis can give you some idea. So yeah, so that's basically the case study from our side. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's very interesting. I also would like to just share quickly our email. If you have questions or if you're doing any analysis, we're really happy to help you with your work, and any kind of questions you have about how to access the data, any methodology questions, or interest in further training for different organizations, please feel free to contact us, connect with us, those emails there on the screen. And just like to thank you again all for joining. Thank you, Fola, for organizing this, and to the CCIJ as well for your continued collaboration. It's been great.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rose. Thank you, Marie. Thank you to Gina and the entire ACLED team. Thank you, Lynn, for stopping by and presenting the use case. We appreciate you, and we appreciate everyone for, for making time to be in this session.